Hey, Joe, how are you today?
Doing great, Mark. How about you?
I'm doing really well. I understand you talked to one of our previous clients, Dave Bryant. We sold his business a little while ago, and you had a conversation with him, and he wasn't stateside, if I'm not mistaken.
Not at all. Dave, originally from Canada, we sold his business. He packed up recently with his wife and his young daughter, and they moved to China for, about a year is the plan. And they just gotten there recently. And we did the interview when he was in a hotel in China. And so you can hear some noise in the background, and it's the quality's pretty good considering he's really on the other side of the world.
Well, and it's kind of appropriate for the topic of what you guys discussed, right? And we've discussed this in one of the other videos that we did with James Thompson as far as what makes a really sustainable Amazon business. And one of the things that he talks about is owning the brand, and if you can own the manufacturing process throughout. And Dave talks a little bit about that, specifically sourcing product from China and importing from China.
He does. Dave is sort of a multifaceted guy. He's a young guy. I believe he's less than 30 years old. We sold his business last fall, in fall of 2016. He did very well with the business, was importing products from China at the time, fairly large boat anchors, really, really heavy. So trying to figure out the logistics of that is pretty important. So he sort of cut his teeth on importing from China on his own business. He's also the co-host of Ecomcrew with Michael Jackness, and is an experienced entrepreneur. He's part of eCommerce Fuel, a big spokesperson there, active in the forum. Really a bright guy that's done a lot of different things, and now is moving his expertise to helping others through Ecomcrew, and he's written a course on importing from China. He's got some really great tips that I think I haven't heard before. So it's really fun to hear him talk about them and help others.
Well, this is a topic that I literally know almost nothing about. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say and start to learn.
I second that. I get nauseous just thinking about importing from China and thinking about the thickness of a cardboard box and the requirements that are necessary. So we leave it up to the experts like Dave to help us out.
Sounds good. Well, let's get to it.
Hey, Dave, welcome to the Quiet Life Podcast.
Cool. Thanks for having me here, Joe.
Where in the world are you right now?
Well, to give people some fair warning, I'm standing in the hotel lobby in Beijing, China right now.
Wow. You're originally from Canada, but are you traveling to the Canton Fair over there right now? Or I think I heard you say you might be living there temporarily.
Yeah. So my wife is originally from Beijing. She's lived in Vancouver now for half her life. But after I sold my business, just about a year later, we decided to take some time away from Vancouver and go travel around China and a little bit of Asia, and hopefully let our daughter get more exposure to Mandarin than she was getting in Vancouver, and pick up the language and hopefully have a good time while we're at it.
Fantastic. Now, you said you sold your business there. You did something that I recommend to most sellers. When I do a valuation exit planning call, I say, look, you got to have some sort of plan for after you sell. You don't sell your business and then try to start another one necessarily, but kind of get the ball rolling beforehand. You sold your business, for just south of $1 million. You're part of eCommerce Fuel. You're a big spokesman there, and you have focused on importing from China for some years now. Is that right?
Yes. And I think guess what you're alluding to is that I had a blog that I've been running for about 2 or 3 years before I basically sold my business. And that's kind of what I had in mind as I saw in the company, that the blog could kind of keep me busy after I sold my company. And I want to get too restless not having anything to look forward to in terms of work.
So how do you convert that blog into income for you? As it's very, very focused on importing from China, right?
I mean, originally the goal was for the blog, it makes a small income from course sales and advertising, but more than anything, it's kind of something to keep me busy. I've always enjoyed writing about e-commerce. I think even more than running an e-commerce company. So more than anything, aside from the money part, it's just something to keep me busy actually after I sold the company.
Excellent. So you and I had taken your business. We listed it for sale. I tell this story often. I'm going to tell it real briefly here. We pushed the value of your business a little higher than we thought it should be pushed, to not sell it right away, which is kind of an odd approach. But we push that value higher so that you could capture more of that spring and summer revenue, right?
Yeah. So we had listed the company for sale, I think either January or February. And the company that I had was specializing in boating supplies. And as you can imagine, a good portion of North America is not looking to buy boating supplies in January and February. So I was kind of looking forward to the fact of holding on to the company through spring and summer, get some of that revenue and into my pocket before I actually exited the company. And so my ideal scenario would have been that, we list it for sale in February and we get a sale in October. And that's basically exactly what happened, at least in terms of the closing date. We listed it in January and sold it closed in October.
And the key thing is that we pushed the multiple a little high, knowing that your year-over-year revenue was growing. You added a number of new SKUs. With each passing month, the discretionary earnings grew and brought that multiple down a little bit, made it more attractive for the buyer. You made more money along the way, and you got a little bit over asking price, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that was the big key, is that we were still growing at a really good pace. So, in February, the multiple might have been 3.2, but by the time we actually got our offer, that multiple had come down quite a bit just because of the growth that we're experiencing. So I think it worked out to a really good win-win for me, of course. I got to hold on to the company during the big summer months, and worked out good for the buyer because they paid a little bit lower multiple than we were originally asking.
All right. And you were selling physical products, and you were importing those from China, some fairly heavy ones, fairly large products that you were importing, right?
Yeah, well, I think I probably am a little bit of an exception for the types of businesses that you sell, and the fact that we were basically selling large 100-pound chunks of metal. Basically, we were selling boat anchors, and we were importing those all from China and selling them primarily through Amazon, but also through eBay and our website, and a couple other channels, trade shows, and a couple other wholesale customers, but primarily through Amazon and eBay and our website.
And did you originally source those products in China through relationships that you had with your wife, or just through hard work and effort?
No, I met my wife well after I started the company, and even after I met her, she basically refused to be part of the company at all. So she happens to be Chinese, but I unfortunately don't get to really utilize her expertise in Chinese culture and language all that much. So it was something I kind of went out on my own when I originally started going to Alibaba, trying to find suppliers, built those relationships over the course of a few years, and eventually grew it from where I was importing 3 or 4 different products to the point where it was around 200 different products.
200 different products. Now, you mentioned Alibaba there. Let's talk a little bit about Chinese importing, because that's the focus of this podcast, and now your expertise in many, many ways. I know you have a variety of expertise, but I want to focus on that right now. You had mentioned in a conversation that you and I had, or I read somewhere, that finding and sourcing products on Alibaba is really not the first or best option for people importing from China. Is that accurate, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started off, Alibaba was still kind of the Wild West, and not a lot of people were actually using Alibaba. I started off in about 2009, 2010. So back then, I think it was a more viable source than it is now. The problem is now everybody and their uncle is going to Alibaba, trying to find products and basically do Chinese arbitrage. Find products on Alibaba for really cheap, resell them without modifying them, and hopefully they make a killing. Nowadays, because there is so much competition, Alibaba isn't the source I recommend to people primarily to find suppliers and products. I think going to actual trade shows and coming to Beijing and Guangzhou and other Chinese cities and actually visiting the trade shows and meeting suppliers that aren't advertising on the internet necessarily. And that way you get away from a lot of the competition that other Amazon sellers are finding. So you get away from all those suppliers everybody's using, and you get more or less kind of exclusive suppliers for yourself.
That's a pretty big commitment for somebody first starting off. They don't know if their business is going to be a success or not. It's a big commitment to hop on a plane and head to China to try to source products if they're just getting into it. How do they go about doing that?
It is a big commitment. I think one of the hacks I always tell people that they can do is, if you don't want to make that commitment to go to Chinese trade shows, what you can do is go to the website of those trade shows. Google Chinese trade shows, the top listing, I forget the URL, but it's going to give you a listing of about 100 different trade shows in China. Go to those websites, go through the vendor list on there, and try to contact those exhibitors directly through the exhibitor list. Contact them, kind of give them the impression that you've actually visited the trade show, even though you might not have. And that way, they'll assume that you've actually been to the trade show. They'll be more open to working with you because they'll think that you're a serious buyer. And again, you're going to get through a lot of that competition that exists on Alibaba.
When you contact those individuals that you've never spoken with before, I assume you're doing it through Skype and it's in English, but do you present yourself as just some guy trying to source products, or are you the sourcing agent for your company, or are you that president of your company? What's the best approach from that perspective?
I don't really present myself as any individual. I don't pretend to be the CEO of a huge multinational company. I don't pretend to be a sales manager or purchasing manager. I just simply sign my name, Dave Bryant. What I do though is my emails. If I'm going through like a vendor list from a trade show, I'll say, hey, I found your information through XYZ trade show. I'd like to get some more information on these products. And what happens is that they assume, oh, you must have actually attended this trade show. Therefore, you actually went to China and you're probably a serious buyer who's actually going to make an order because you took all the effort to visit China, even if that's not necessarily the case.
Gotcha. So one of the things that you and I talked about, and I talk about with a lot of people that are exiting their business, when they do it well and they plan 12, 18, 24 months in advance, they can set certain goals and then focus on that bottom line seller's discretionary earnings. One of the things that is tossed around a lot is saving money on shipping or renegotiating costs of goods sold. I can see the appeal. I can see the clear math and the financial benefit of, if you spend $1 million on inventory a year and you shave, a few percentage points off, it adds up to a lot. And then you multiply that times 3 for the value of your business, and it's done fairly quickly. How easy is it, or how difficult is it to negotiate a reduction in cost of goods sold? Do you have to be spending a lot of money, or is it just asking for it?
I mean, with what I had done about a year before we actually sold the company, is I went through all of our actual profit margins per product. And it's amazing, when you run a company for a long time, you kind of lose sight of how much money you're making per product. And so I went through all our products and I found that probably 20% of them were actually losing money, not even breaking even or making a small amount of money. They're actually losing money. So basically I went through with all those products. I went back to the vendors and I said, hey, we can't continue to offer these products unless we get some pretty sizable discounts. And I simply did the math. I reverse engineered that we needed to make about 25% net margins after selling the product and all shipping costs. And I basically determined what the product cost was that we would need to meet those margins. And I said, hey, can you meet these targets? If you can't, then unfortunately we're going to just discontinue these products. If you can, here's a purchase order from them. And surprisingly, for a lot of the products, vendors are more than happy actually to meet those targets. Probably that says something about the fact that they're making a lot more money than they probably needed or expected. So I think over time, it's sometimes easy to be gouged a little bit if you kind of take your finger off the button.
That's incredible. I mean, just the fact that all you did was ask for it and they gave it to you, and you were actually selling products that you were losing money on. You said you had something like 200 SKUs when you launched. That's the beauty and benefit of planning in advance for a sale, renegotiating, looking at all your SKUs and renegotiating. Do you have any idea, ballpark, about what you saved there?
Well, I mean, the cost of goods sold, it's hard for me to pinpoint an actual number, but I can say this. So I think it was 2014, the end of 2014, where I kind of made a decision that I wanted to list the company for sale. I actually listed it in the beginning of 2016. So there was about a year and a half gap there. And so I actually went through all our costs and, determined what costs I thought I could shave some money off of. And I went through every vendor, not just vendors actually selling products, but things like 3PLs, third-party logistics companies, internet providers, cell phone providers, went through all those companies, and I tried to renegotiate every last penny that I could. And I wasn't exactly all that aggressive. I just simply asked for discounts, knowing that every dollar that I could get saved per month would be a 3 times multiple. Actually, not even 3 times, 36 times, because that's per month over 3 years. So that was kind of my motivation. I just went through all our vendors and tried to get as much of a discount and cost savings on those costs as I could. And I would estimate probably 50 to 60% of them agreed to give discounts. And and overall, I think it worked out to about a $40,000 a year savings that I managed to get.
That's incredible. And then you multiply that times three, you put an additional $140,000. I'm sorry, $120,000 onto your list price. Good math there. When it comes to shipping containers or shipping by air, are there any tricks or any ways to save any money in terms of the shipping, either directly to Amazon or to a 3PL or anything like that?
So
anything that was you recommend?
That was another one of the ways that we saved a lot of money, is that we actually had 2 suppliers combine their orders and ship them as one consolidated shipment. And because a lot of times when you're shipping from China, you can't fill an entire container. And you can mix your stuff with other people's goods, but that doesn't really give you necessarily huge economies of scale. But if you can combine 2 of your own shipments into the same container, then you can get real economies of scale. So that's what we were doing a lot in the end. We were having 2 suppliers kind of close by in the same region, ship all the products into one container, ship them to the US, and it would save us probably about half the cost on shipping.
Did you have a Chinese representative that would help coordinate that over there and having the 2 suppliers combine the shipments, or how did you manage all that as one person?
All that I would do is I would have supplier A ship all the goods to supplier B, and then supplier B would combine everything into the container right there and then.
And the cost of shipping that to supplier B was offset by shipping it all in one container.
Yeah, because they were happy. They would have to either ship it to the port or to supplier B, and actually supplier B a lot of times worked out a little bit closer and cheaper to ship to than to the port. So again, it was a win-win for everybody.
That's terrific. One of the big savings that people talk about is the cost of fulfillment or shipping the product to the 3PL. Did you consistently ship it to the 3PL or direct to Amazon? Are there any hacks or tricks there in terms of saving and the hassle and whatnot when it comes to shipping to the fulfillment center or to Amazon?
We had shipped to Amazon a couple times, but unfortunately that's something I probably left money on the table with, is the fact that I always used a middleman in between. So the products go from China to a 3PL and then to Amazon. That added a lot of additional cost. The more ideal way to do it, of course, is to ship it directly from China to Amazon. And that way you save the middleman, the 3PL, adding all their costs into the equation. And I know, speaking with the buyer that bought my business in the last few months, I know that's something that they're doing a lot more, is simply avoiding that middleman and shipping directly into Amazon.
Your buyer is tough, by the way. We won't talk about that too much, but he's a very, very bright guy, very aggressive, CEO of a publicly traded company or a division of one that keeps the lights on, right? Or sells the lights or the light bulbs. Has he taken the business and grown it and enhanced what you did? Or have you had to teach him a lot in the training and transition period about importing from China?
Well, 2 things. I mean, number one, I was absolutely shocked how quickly they picked up the business. I think a lot of times we run our businesses and we think, geez, I'm just some genius who runs this company and nobody can ever do it as well as me. I'd be grudgingly running it. And the other thing I've also realized is that some people buy these companies, not necessarily they grow them 10 times the revenue, but kind of as a cash flow play. So I think they had essentially bought the company, and he realized, if I put my money in a bank, I'm probably going to make 3 or 4%. I put it in a company that I buy, I could probably make 15 to 20%. So I think that was kind of their primary motivation. And I think they've done a great job of it, of actually maximizing profit and getting a pretty good return on his money.
Excellent. Hey, listen, I was at an event in May, and someone got up on stage and did a presentation about importing from China. Now, look, I'm a business broker, the Quiet Life brokerage right now, but I've had an e-commerce site and I've had to import from China. And when she got up there and spoke, and she talked about the minutia, the level of detail that's necessary in order to get the product right. Like, she was talking about the thickness of the cardboard that the product is placed in the box. It made me never, ever want to import from China, ever be in the e-commerce business again. Is your course, is your program focused on that level of detail, or is it bigger picture, saving money with negotiations, where to find products that, not on Alibaba and shipping and things of that nature? What level of detail does your program go into?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that we focus on. Number one is making your products just a little bit different, differentiating them just a wee little bit, because Amazon is becoming a little bit more competitive marketplace now. So if you can change your products just a wee little bit, you're going to have that much more of a stronger advantage. And number two, like a lot of the things that we talked about, shipping. It's one of the biggest costs that you're going to have in your business. Doesn't matter whether you're ordering from China or a local manufacturer, shipping is always going to be either your first cost or your second cost. So we definitely focus a lot on saving money through shipping and just kind of efficiencies in that regard.
Is there any way to stop a Chinese manufacturing company from knocking off your own product and competing with you?
I think in the long run, there's probably not a lot that you can do. In the short run, there's definitely a couple things that you can do. Number one, differentiate your products a little bit they might eventually steal kind of your ideas, but in the short run, it's going to definitely prevent them from doing that. Number two, build relationships with your suppliers. That's one of the things that I've really focused on with all companies, is building those relationships. And, if they do ever want to kind of enter into the direct to consumer marketplace in America, most Chinese suppliers prefer to have a partner. So if you're basically their best friend in America, they're going to want to partner with you. And again, you can get a lot of win-wins that way. So
is it an unfounded fear that a lot of people have then, that they think their Chinese manufacturer is going to knock them off and compete directly? So a lot of buyers ask about, do you have an exclusive with the manufacturer? And that's just unheard of. Yeah. We're not, selling Nike and GE and things of this nature. Is it an unfounded fear that people have, or is it a legitimate concern that they should have?
I think it's a completely legitimate concern that people have, and the fact that every time I go to China, every single supplier is always very, very inquisitive about Amazon. And 3 or 4 years ago, most Chinese suppliers had no idea what Amazon was. They thought it was a river in the South America. Nowadays, every single time I talk with a Chinese supplier, that's the first question that comes up, or one of the first ones. However, like I mentioned, you can avoid it. If you become your supplier's best friend, they're going to want to partner with you rather than compete against you. And number two, at the end of the day, there's always going to be competition, whether it's coming from China or from some kid in their basement in America. There's always going to be competition. So it doesn't really matter if it's from China or America or Canada or wherever. There's always going to be competition. Chinese suppliers are always going to have their weaknesses. They're never going to understand Western marketplaces, Western consumers, like a real person living and breathing in America or Canada or wherever you are. They can never understand it like we can. So, they have their advantages and they also have their disadvantages.
So the key is just to do a better job. Differentiate your product, have better margins, better planning, better shipping, and better marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. If it comes down to a cost war only, they're probably going to win. If you can differentiate your product a little bit, or even make your marketing you market it a lot better, and you're more efficient, more effective in that way, you're probably going to win. But if you just get into a cost battle, I don't think it matters if you're dealing with Chinese suppliers or American suppliers that are competing with you. It's going to be a tough battle to win in the long run.
So what's next for Dave Bryant? Are you setting up a new e-commerce business? You're going to do some importing from China yourself, or are you focused on teaching others how to do it?
Right now, me and my family moved over to China, take a little bit of a sabbatical, I guess, me and my wife and our daughter. So that's immediately in the forefront. However, about a month after selling my business, I got an itchy trigger finger, I guess, and I started up another company focusing on importing products from China. And so I'm still running that in the background, along with ChineseImporting.com, which is now actually merged into Ecomcrew.com.
Yeah, you and Michael Jackness on a podcast all about e-commerce. Mike's Absolutely. A good guy. It's a good team.
He is.
So the Chinese importing, how do people find out about the course? What website do they go to? How would they reach out to you to learn more about it?
Yeah, they can check out ecomcrew.com. We have a pretty active blog and also a pretty active podcast. A lot of good free information there. People want to join the course. I think it's great value for them. I think they're going to learn a lot, and hopefully they can list their business for sale in the future and make a bunch of money themselves, and probably get Quiet Light Brokerage, you get a nice little commission as well.
Well, we're certainly going to help them if they need it. That's for sure. Any last little tidbits that anybody that's looking to import from China, any just sort of golden nuggets that you can share, even without them going to the course, anything that would benefit them from this?
Yeah, I think I'd say a couple things. Number one, I think a lot of people are really tentative of starting a new e-commerce business. They think that they kind of missed the boat. There's still a ton of opportunity. I started, like I mentioned, a new company basically about a month after I sold my previous company. It's already doing about $20,000 a month in revenue. So there really is still a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of free information out there. There's a lot of paid information out there. Do as much research as you can, though, and there still is a lot of opportunity there. And number two, I use Quiet Light Brokerage. Joe Valley helped sell my company. I'm a little bit biased, but I definitely not give you more of a wholehearted recommendation. I toyed with the idea, like a lot of people, of trying to sell my company on my own. It's tough to do. It's like selling a home. I mean, you can try to sell your home on your own, save the commission, but at the end of the day, having a realtor, or in the case of a business broker, really helps.
You just want me to buy you dinner, buy you drinks, all that stuff. I mean, that's why I had you on the podcast, just for you to say that and endorse me. This is supposed to be about you and your course and importing from China. It's not about Quiet Light Brokerage, but I do appreciate it.
I need more than a beer now. I'm looking for dinner and hopefully lunch.
You'll get all of that.
In all seriousness, Joe, I was a first-time business seller, and I definitely could not have hoped for a much better experience selling my company.
Well, again, though, you did it great. You started planning well in advance. You just said a couple of years in advance. You renegotiated your cost of goods sold on certain SKUs that weren't even profitable. You consolidated shipments from different manufacturers or vendors into a container, save money on the shipping costs. Probably added, you said 40 on the SKUs on renegotiations, but I wouldn't be surprised if you added 50 or 60,000 in discretionary earnings. And when you plan that well in advance and you make that part of your trailing 12 months discretionary earnings, your revenue might be growing slightly, but your discretionary earnings is growing even faster. So you're showing year-over-year growth, and you've got good logical reasons why you can point to the buyer. And again, for anybody listening, Dave's buyer was the CEO of a publicly traded company. He's not just some guy with some money and no brains or experience. He was very seasoned in business. So he appreciated the level of detail that you had and what you laid out for him and the path to growth that you had put in place for him. You added some new SKUs that hadn't even been around for a full season yet, and he could see the growth opportunities there as well. I'm sure he's doing great. Maybe we ought to have him on the show as well. But listen, Dave, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your experience on selling your business and on importing from China. I think it's a tremendous thing that you can help others with your experience as you're doing now. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And it was a blast to be here.
Enjoy your time over there. Get some sleep. I know it's late.
I will try.